Let's take a look at today's papers. And we'll start with the Times front page, saying there that the police forces are preparing for a busy day with reports of at least 30 possible gatherings across the UK shared on social media. The paper says that more than 6,000 riot officers are on standby.
Well, The Guardian leads with reports that immigration lawyers are at risk amid threats that advice centres could be targeted today. The paper says police chiefs have announced the deployment of an extra 2,000 officers.
More now on the ongoing unrest, and Scotland Yard has warned anyone planning disorder here in the capital will face the full force of the law. Deputy Assistant Commissioner Andy Valentine said the Met were aware of events planned across the capital and will use every power, tactic and tool available to prevent further scenes of disorder and violence. The Mayor Sadiq Khan has urged Londoners to check in on their friends, relatives, neighbours and colleagues from ethnic minorities.
At 6, thousands of police on the streets tonight with more than 100 far-right demonstrations planned. Shops and businesses have been boarded up in a number of towns and cities, with large parts of northern England of particular concern. The Deputy Prime Minister says the police will be ready.
I know that the public will be feeling anxious about the reports of potential more unrest tonight, but the police will be there to respond.
The first rioters are sent to jail. 3 men involved in the initial violence after the Southport stabbings are sentenced up to 3 years in prison.
On patrol with the Met as police officers seek to reassure Londoners they're ready to respond to any violent disorder.
We're here to provide reassurance and keep members of the public safe, and we're going to do everything that we can to prevent any disorder or any criminality taking place.
1,300 public order police will also be on standby tonight.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. The UK's most senior police officer says thousands of police are on the streets tonight, many of them sent to protect immigration lawyers and specialists who are being targeted by rioters. Around 100 far-right demonstrations are due to take place, as well as up to 30 counter-protests. The head of the Metropolitan Police, Sir Mark Rowley, says anyone caught taking part in violence, whether on the streets or online, will face the full force of the law. More than 400 people have been arrested since the riots started a week ago after the Southport stabbings. 3 men who took part in that initial violence were sent to jail today for up to 3 years. From Liverpool, here's Dominic Casciani.
A week of violence, and now the wheels of justice visibly turning, swiftly, for the first 3 men to be jailed for violent disorder. 3 years for Derek Drummond, 30 months for Declan Gearan, and 20 months for Liam Riley. Last week they'd attacked their communities. On Monday they admitted their crimes, and today at Liverpool Crown Court they faced the consequences. Derek Drummond joined the 1,000-strong mob that marched on Southport's mosque last Tuesday. He attacked police as they battled to contain the violence. Declan Gearan joined a gang in Liverpool last Saturday. He set fire to a police van and watched it burn. Elsewhere in the city the same day, Liam Riley was among 100 people advancing on police as some threw rocks and bricks. An officer grappled him to the ground. Riley, who was clearly drunk, shouted that he was a traitor and Muslim lover. Today the judge said the disorder had been the most foul and racist abuse. This was not mindless thuggery. You and every other defendant I am dealing with today made a choice to get involved, he said.
The 3 men sentenced today are the tip of the iceberg and just the start of what will be a very painful process for many who foolishly chose to involve themselves in violent unrest. Many of those involved will be sent to prison for a long time. Riley, Drummond and Gearan mistakenly thought they would escape justice. They now face an extended period of time behind bars, and their criminal convictions will stay with them forever.
But how many will be deterred? Police chiefs spent today preparing for up to 100 far-right gatherings across England, some claiming they will target immigration lawyers and refugee support centres. 6,000 riot-trained officers are on standby under a national mobilisation plan last used to end riots in 2011.
We've changed our tactics in the last couple of days. So besides marshalling more officers, we're brigading some of them at key strategic locations across the country to give us more agility to respond to wherever the protests are most intense, so that we can respond with agility and show overwhelming force so that the criminals and thugs on the streets don't succeed.
I know that the public will be feeling anxious about the reports of potential more unrest tonight, but the police will be there to respond to any violent and criminality that we see on our streets. There's no place for that on our UK streets, and the police will do their job like they have done exceptionally well under very difficult circumstances like I've seen here and witnessed today what they faced.
Tonight, some premises are taking no chances. Additional security in place, staff safely at home, waiting to see what might come. Sophie, what happened today here at Liverpool Crown Court is really just the start of this process of justice being seen to be done. We've had convictions around the country in other locations, Plymouth, Manchester, Teesside, but this has been the most significant so far with this 3-year sentence for Derek Drummond, the 58-year-old who was involved in the violence in Southport. And when he was arrested and sat in the interview suite and realised what he'd done, he said to police officers, "I've let Southport down, I've let the girls down," meaning the murdered children, "and I've let my family down." This sentence means he's got an awful long time now to think about that, and I dare say others are going to be following him. Sophie.
Dominic, thank you. Well, as you just saw, shops and businesses are being boarded up and closing early in a number of towns and cities, including parts of Birmingham, which has already seen some violent demonstrations this week after false reports that far-right protesters were planning to march. Our correspondent Phil Mackey has been gauging the mood there this afternoon amid fears that there could be more violence tonight.
The last appointment was hours earlier than usual.
What are you doing tonight? Getting out of Dodge?
Like everyone else here, they're worried about more potential disorder.
I think it's quite scary. I think the one thing that Birmingham has always done well is been one city for everybody. And I think that's one of the great things about Birmingham. And I hope that doesn't change, really.
It's a bit tit for tat. It's like, it's meant to be peaceful protest, but one bad thing gets said and it just erupts into chaos. So it shouldn't really be happening, but this day and age things do happen because people's bloods boil over certain things.
There's an immigration centre nearby and online rumours spread about a possible demonstration and counter-demonstration.
People are getting nervous. They don't like what they're seeing on the news and reading on social media, and they're especially worried when they hear that what they've seen happening might come to the area in which they live and work, and they want it to stop.
Cam's also shutting up shop, but he's staying around to keep an eye on his business.
I feel on edge, and I feel, I wouldn't say afraid, because we can't be afraid, obviously, but it just puts everyone on edge. All my family's on edge. Yeah, literally, everyone around me is on edge, that sort of colour, literally. And even a lot of white people are on edge because they feel as if they will be treated like the people that are doing the bad stuff. So it kind of spoils everyone all around.
Tariq Jahan has bitter memories of the last major disorder in Birmingham in 2011. After his son was killed, he made this intervention.
I lost my son. Blacks, Asians, whites, we all live in the same community. Why do we have to kill one another?
I fear for the fact that the only way we're going to learn again is, you know, someone's going to end up losing their life.
Arrests have already been made after protest turned to violence here earlier in the week, and more will follow if there's a repeat.
We aren't anti-protest, we are anti-criminality. If you're coming to commit criminality, you're not welcome and we will deal with you robustly.
For now, the shutters have come down, but Birmingham hopes it will wake up to normality, not criminality.
So there's a refugee and migrant centre just around the corner from here, and there's a small group of people who've gathered there. It's not clear whether they intend to stage a protest later or not. In fact, there are more journalists and more police officers in this part of Birmingham at the moment, and lots of police patrols, mainly for reassurance, but also keeping an eye on the situation. And here in the Jewellery Quarter, we'd normally see its restaurants and takeaways being really busy, but as you can see, most people have gone home and are staying in for the night, and they hope that it will stay as quiet as it is now.
Phil Mackey in Birmingham, thank you. Well, joining me now is our senior UK affairs correspondent, Seema Katecha, and tell us more about the latest situation.
Yes, well, Sophie, this evening, police sources believe resourcing matches the intelligence picture. In other words, they believe they've got the officers to deal with whatever happens. Now, the Metropolitan Police in London, that's the largest force in the UK, is deploying officers to the north, with the Commissioner saying strategic reserves of officers will be on standby and based at key locations. Now, this is what's called a nationalised mobilisation plan, and what that means is officers are shared with other forces across the country, and the last time we saw this happen was during the riots in 2011. Now, over the last couple of days, many may have seen a list of immigration lawyers going viral on social media. The Met Chief said protecting those places is one of their main objectives tonight, saying we will not let the immigration asylum system be intimidated. Now, the police and the government are trying to reassure the public that everything's in hand, but I think depending on what happens tonight, how things turn out, may show whether jailing people quickly, as we've heard today, is acting as the deterrent they hope it is.
Seema Katecha, thank you. Well, the first riots last week followed the fatal stabbings of 3 little girls at a dance studio in Southport. Today, the inquests into their deaths were opened and adjourned. Axel Rudakabana has been charged with 3 counts of murder and 10 counts of attempted murder and will go on trial next year. Fiona Trott reports.
Bibi, who was just 6, 7-year-old Elsie and Alice, aged 9. 3 young lives, the court heard, cruelly lost in horrific circumstances. The coroner here at Bootle Town Hall said the 3 children were full of life and energy and will be missed beyond any description my woefully inadequate words may attempt to describe. At a special church service last night, a local priest offered his words of comfort to Alice's parents.
The beautiful, smiling, joy-filled Alice. We welcome all of you here tonight, of course especially Sergio, Alexandra, Mummy and Daddy, and your family and friends, and so many others who you don't even know, some of us.
And there are flowers too from so many strangers here in Southport who still want to show their support more than a week after the fatal attacks.
For people who live close to where this happened, life has stood still. Normally at times like these you'd throw yourself into your work, but the shops and offices here are still closed. They can't receive deliveries, they can't receive post, they can't go out in their cars. Minor inconveniences, they say, that they feel guilty about. It's the families, they say, that matter most. So while their lives are on hold, at least the inquest openings allow the relatives to move on to the next important chapter. And that's holding a funeral for their little girls.
Alice Aguiar's funeral will be held on Sunday. Another chance for the community to wrap their arms around her family. Fiona Trott, BBC News, Southport.
Good evening. In a North London suburb, shops and pubs have boarded up windows. GP surgeries have cancelled appointments and nurseries have asked parents to collect their children early. It's all because of fears of a riot tonight. Far-right protests are planned in North Finchley, as well as counter-protests organised by groups like Stand Up to Racism. And it's not just Finchley. Demonstrations are planned in other boroughs across the capital and across the country. One immigration lawyer has told ITV News that he's had phone calls today threatening his life. The Met Police has deployed extra officers tonight, and the message from the Commissioner is clear. Commit crimes on the streets or incite violence online and you will face the full force of the law. In a moment, we'll be live in Walthamstow and Finchley, from where our political correspondent Simon Harris sent this report.
This estate agent was taking no chances. The glass shop front on the high road in North Finchley was boarded up yesterday, and people working in nearby shops and offices were understandably anxious.
I think it'll be much later in the evening. I'm hoping it's not going to be in the afternoon, but if we think that it's going to be coming up, then we'll just leave.
I work literally around the corner from here. I've just come for a coffee, and even that I wasn't sure I wanted to do.
We've got a vibrant community here in North Finchley. No need for it really, so it's very disappointing.
I wouldn't put the blame on any of the people protesting. I'd solely put the blame on politicians because they've done nothing to curb the immigration.
Like many traders here, Unal decided to shut his pizza restaurant early.
We're going to close.
100% is going to affect our business. We're not going to make anything today.
How angry does that make you?
Yeah, it's not good for no good for community, no good for business, no good for people. Of course, we are not happy.
A few doors away, neighbours of a barber say he painted over the word Turkish to avoid drawing attention. Newspapers covered the windows. At another salon, most of Andy's customers cancelled their appointments, although Andrew was having none of it.
I'm certainly not going to be intimidated by a load of fascist morons, and that's all it is to it, really. I think it's disgraceful what's happening in this country, absolutely appalling.
From this morning, officers from Scotland Yard's riot squad, the territorial support group, were patrolling the area, trying to reassure local people. Posts on social media suggested a local firm, which advertises itself as an immigration and nationality service, could be one of a number of targets in London.
It is completely unacceptable, regardless of your political views, to intimidate any sector of lawful activity, and we will not let the immigration asylum system be intimidated. They're operating lawfully. The thugs and criminals who are targeting them are not, and we'll stop that.
On top of the threat of action by the far right, there are also fears of a clash with counter-demonstrators. These posters have appeared in the area, advertising a demonstration at around the same time under the banner of Stand Up to Racism. The message from one organiser hinted at trouble.
We have to nip this in the bud. We need to turn around to the bullies, the Nazis, the racists and the bigots and say we're not divided. Actually, far from it, we're far stronger than you, and we're giving you a chance to leave. You can walk away from our area or be carried away from our area.
The Met's riot squads may or may not be called upon tonight, but even the suggestion of possible disorder was enough to disrupt lives and businesses.
Simon, you spent the day in Finchley, didn't you? What is the atmosphere like there this evening?
Well, Lucrezia, understandably, there's been a lot of concern here today about how events might unfold tonight. It is quiet at the moment. Most of the shops are closed, not all of them. Many of them have had their roller shutters down. There are a handful of counter-protesters over here. These are people from Stand Up to Racism. But by and large, it's mostly quiet here. Feels a bit like a normal rush hour with lots of traffic. A couple of posters have been put up saying good vibes only, but there are a lot more police on the streets. If you look up here, these are members of the territorial support group who've already been put into position, and we've seen a lot more parked up in vans in nearby retail parks.
And Simon, as you say, it's quiet there at the moment, but a really worrying time for many communities across the capital. And the Met Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, is sending out a very, very clear message today to those intent on causing any violence.
Yes, Sir Mark was very clear about throwing the book at anyone who's caught up in disorder. He said that there are more than 1,300 officers trained in dealing with riots who are on duty tonight. But perhaps one of the most significant weapons in the Met's armoury is cameras, whether they're CCTV cameras, lots of those in London, as we know, body-worn cameras on the police or cameras on helicopters. They apparently have the ability now to do retrospective facial recognition and can even recognise faces of people wearing masks.
All right, Simon, in Finchley, thank you. Well, let's go to Rags Martell, who is in Walthamstow, where people are also gathering tonight. And so, Rags, what are you hearing and seeing there right now?
Well, Lucrezia, Walthamstow is another area where far-right protesters are planned to protest, and initially there were 4 locations in London, but throughout the day that number has grown and there are new areas expected in southeast London. So this is what Walthamstow looks like at the moment: a heavy police presence on the ground and in vans. Many businesses have shut up shop for the day. They've boarded up their windows and doors, but the truth is no one knows exactly what's going to happen, but the fear here is very real. Earlier I spoke to a human rights lawyer who's based in West London, and he was a former refugee himself, and earlier this week he was the subject of a death threat.
I received a phone call on Monday and they said that they know where I work and that I'm what's wrong with this country and that they will kill me. So I was shell-shocked when I heard about what I was hearing, and by the time I could process it, they had already cut the line.
I mean, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel unsafe more than ever. I've been doing this job in this, and I've been working in this field for a very long time, and I've never felt this unsafe.
Well, the streets were quite empty when we got here, but you get a sense that tensions are rising. We've got some footage now of what we can call counter-protesters. They were chanting "God is great" in Arabic. They were quickly contained by the police, and all that has quietened down now. And the demonstrations aren't due to start until 8 p.m. tonight.